Imagine for a moment that you could hand over responsibility for managing your life to a benevolent and highly motivated business. That every way in which your life was unsatisfactory was identifiable, measurable, and improvable, and that every aspect of your life that needed to change was handed over to a team of portfolio and project managers to go and implement. Could the principles, tools, and techniques behind corporate strategic change be used to make you more productive, more effective, more happy? I enjoy watching productivity and personal growth experts on YouTube. They've provided me with dozens of tips and tricks and insights and approaches to make small improvements to my work, in my creativity, and in my home life. I have a lot of respect for the effort and research to present these approaches, and so much admiration for the creativity that allows the topics to be presented in a fun, interesting, and sometimes even beautiful manner. But there's always been a part of me that's been silently critical of what I've been seeing. That's because for more than a decade, I've been working with some of the biggest businesses and organizations in the world and seeing how they go about changing themselves. And that gives me a different perspective on how change is effectively implemented. Organizations around the world pump billions of dollars every year into managing change effectively because change is complicated. Organizations are complex with overlapping systems, multiple processes that are in constant use, detailed historical and real-time information that can often contradict itself, and of course, it's dependent on people. But are people less complex? We have overlapping systems that can cause chaos if one of them stops working properly. Our entire behavior is nothing more than a set of processes that operate with varying levels of consciousness. We are full of information that ranges from current to outdated, from accurate to false, from helpful to harmful. So if we really want to improve our lives, significantly improve our lives, can we do so with a few tweaks, a bullet journal, and an app or two? I guess that depends on the improvement you're looking to make. But for the next few minutes, let's assume that there's been a corporate takeover and all of the changes in your life are to be managed by project and portfolio managers. Where would they start? And if you're thinking setting goals, you're wrong. How can we set a goal with the intent of it improving our lives if we don't recognize what our values are first? Without first identifying when we are happiest and most fulfilled in our lives, how can we set suitable goals? So consider, if you value family and spending time with your family, setting a goal that commits you to an 80-hour work week will leave you feeling unfulfilled. Defining our values is a little more meaningful for individuals than organizations. We can be completely honest with ourselves in the knowledge we don't have to advertise our values to stakeholders, customers, market analysts. If your values include achievement, honesty, friendship, health, just take some time to identify them so that when you do set your goals, they're consistent with your values and don't force you to compromise on things that are the most important in your life. One last thing on values though, it's easy to dismiss corporate values if you think all they care about is profits, and you may be right to do so. But that's not to say that the desire for profits is necessarily bad. So if you value accumulation of money or assets, that's not wrong either. Just be honest with yourself about it. You'll have a happier life and you won't feel as though you're constantly working against yourself. You have goals. Organizations have strategic objectives. It's about the same kind of thing, but strategic objectives tend to be focused around longer-term goals. So consider your long-term goals, things you want to achieve in 5, 10, 20 years, or even longer. Do you want to be wealthier, successful in your career, healthier, have quality family time, and so on? They're the typical goals that people reach towards, but you may have something else in mind. For example, do you want to represent your country and compete in the Olympics? Do you want to write a best-selling book? Do you want to get internet famous and have 1 million subscribers on your YouTube channel? Again, you must be honest with yourself. This has to be your goal, not somebody else's. Having the goal in mind, you need to define what success looks like. An organization's strategic objective could be something as predictable as be more profitable, But for it to be a good strategic goal, they'll need to talk about measurable goals. How much more profitable per year? Or how much market share do they want? So go back to your goals and put measures on them. If you want to do well in your career, what role do you want? And when do you want it by? If you want to be healthier, this could be a BMI target, a weight target, a body fat muscle ratio, or something else entirely. This is where projects come in. Strategic objectives don't achieve themselves, and neither will your goals. So now you need to consider the vehicle for getting from where you are to where you want to be. This is where you create a set of projects that will get you from your current state to your future state. In some cases, a single project may get you directly to the future state. In other cases, you may need a few connected projects that overlap in a few places. For example, to lose weight, you may want to build regular long-distance running into your schedule. Having a measurable goal, as described earlier, would be really helpful here. Maybe your single project is that by a specified date in the future, you can run 3 times per week for 30 minutes at a time, and you'll slowly build yourself up to achieving that and then maintaining it going forwards. On the other hand, you may be more inspired by the idea of running great distances in a single outing, like a marathon. But rather than heading out on day one and running a marathon and risking injury and harming your motivation, you could aim for a smaller target. Project 1 could be to run a mile without stopping. Project 2 could be to complete a 5k run. Project 3 could be to complete a 10k run, and so on until you've completed a marathon. And then maybe you'll start new projects to improve your time. These projects could apply to career goals, to reducing debt in your life, to learning skills. But there is a catch, and it's a catch that many organizations fail to take into consideration. You have to prioritize your projects because you just don't have the resources, in this case time, energy, or money, to do them all at once. I can tell you from experience that explaining to high-powered bosses of corporations that everything they want can't be done all at once and it can't all be top priority is incredibly difficult. It should be easier to have that conversation with yourself, right? If only that were true. Instead, people take on the burden of doing too much or expecting too much of themselves, setting themselves up for failure, guilt, and loss of motivation. So make it easy for yourself and look at your resources of time, energy, and money and be realistic about how many projects you can do at a time. Hopefully knowing this will help you to feel positive about what you're about to do in your life. So I'm going to inject a big dose of negativity now, and let's figure out why things are going to go wrong. Think about your new project. You can accomplish the goal you've set. You've the time, the energy, the resources in place. But if it were to fail, why would that be? Seriously, what's the most likely cause of failure? Put yourself in the shoes of your future self, explaining why your project just failed. What are you saying? Note it down. Now do that again for the next most likely reason it would fail, and note that down. And continue until you have a list of reasons why your project is bound to fail. So negative, right? Talk about a buzzkill. But for me, this is one of the most exciting parts of project management. You've identified the threats to your project and you're going to manage them. We are going to de-risk your project. For every threat you've identified, create a short action plan of things you can start doing as soon as possible to ensure those threats don't happen. So let's consider some of the typical threats. A likely risk is that you'll lose motivation to continue delivering the project. So you need to identify the warning signs that your motivation's dropping and create an action plan to combat that. There are plenty of videos to watch about managing motivation, so take some time after this video to see what they recommend. Other threats may be that you get distracted onto something else and unconsciously deprioritize this project at the expense of some new shiny idea. Create a plan to track these things. Have reminders around to stay focused on your goal and to overcome your distractions. Maybe life changes will occur. Your resources could be depleted by ill health, loss of income, higher living costs, and so on. Create small plans that you can implement now to overcome or at least mitigate these threats. After a while, you may notice that some of the threats, especially external ones, can't be entirely overcome by any level of planning. That's not a problem, it's just being realistic. Rather than beat yourself up about it though, or ignore it, instead keep an eye on the situation. Every now and again, just periodically check in on those external factors and see if they're playing out in a negative way, and consider whether the situation's changed to provide you with a better way of managing them. Projects have a definite start point and a definite end point. So, if you start planning when things will happen in your project, you can start with that very certain start date and the less certain end date. There is more though. On your way to completing your project, you'll likely have various milestones. For a YouTuber growing their audience to 100 million subscribers, it's important to celebrate the milestones along the way. The first 1,000 subscribers, the first 10,000, and so on. The same applies to fitness, to health, to career goals, and could potentially work for a variety of personal goals. Identify the milestones you'll accomplish as you progress through the project, and then look at the rate you're progressing and start to set target dates around them. Keep in mind, not all projects have a straight line to completion. Weight loss is a good example. It's possible to get fast gains early on, but then the progress tends to slow and it becomes harder to sustain the same levels of weight loss. So be realistic and do some research on how quickly you can progress to achieve each milestone. There's a variety of tools and practices used by project managers to deliver their projects and goals successfully, and I suspect that there are others that can be transferred to achieving your personal goals. Obviously, I'm foreshadowing a sequel to this video, aren't I? If there is one more powerful function of how corporations deliver their goals, it's through reporting and scrutiny. The project manager is responsible for delivering the project. The business leader that's funding it is accountable for its success or failure. And with that understood, the project receives scrutiny at many levels, such as project board meetings, steering committee meetings, executive committees, and sometimes all the way up to the C-suite, with a variety of people inquiring to the health of the project. Think about your project again. How much more likely is it that you'll accomplish your goals if you have to report progress on it? If you were accountable for completing the things you commit to doing? Keeping a food diary is tedious, but just reporting what you had for lunch to an app can impact on your decision making in a very positive way. Telling an interested friend every week how much further you've managed to run will keep you working hard. Explaining the new skills that you've learned and how you applied them to a mentor at work every month will keep you interested in learning and applying more new skills. Find some way to report your progress to someone or something else and encourage scrutiny. Ask that other party to find the holes in your plan, to uncover new risks, and to challenge your assumptions. So that's how you manage your life like a project. And if you're interested in project management as a profession, you may be interested to know how much I've been paid in the various project management jobs I've had. If so, click this link over here and I'll tell you everything.